I'll be the first to say that I wasn't sure how Solo Leveling was gonna go. Frankly, I never read the manhwa up until this point, and I was kind of waiting for the anime to come out. Now, it wasn't because I was skeptical. It wasn't because I thought, oh, maybe it's not going to be as good as everyone says. But I just didn't feel the urge to really read something like this. I didn't really have the urge to do anything solo leveling based. I thought, well, it's a stat system, and I've played video games with various amounts of stat systems. But when the anime came out, or when it did come out, it blew my mind. I was really taken back, so much so that I started reading the manhwa, and then it blew my mind again. Definitely something different than I ever thought it was going to be, so I was thinking, what would have happened if Tanjiro had solo leveling? Now, for starters, I'm gonna do a little bit of a spoiler here. He'd be drastically overpowered, but like I said before, I'm gonna be adding some of these to this style of what if, where I'm going to break down different ways that more or less would occur, or different things that would occur because he had solo leveling. Now, I want to start with the very, very basic, at the very, very beginning of Demon Slayer. Now, for the very beginning, we have to somehow give Tanjiro solo leveling. And the best way I can think of this is Tanjiro actually decides to head up that mountain. Head up the mountain before he actually would go to sleep that night. And eventually he would arrive with his family right before Muzan would arrive. When Muzan would arrive and basically kill everybody, Tanjiro would be in that feat as well. He would infect Nezuko, or more or less turn her into a demon, but he would also kill Tanjiro, or at least that's what he would think. But then out of nowhere, while Tanjiro lays there lifeless and is about to pass away, he would see something come up on his interface, or within his eyes. He's not sure what it is, he's not sure at all, but it would say that he either has to accept this new challenge, or he will die. More or less saying that his heart will stop instantaneously, unless he accepts this new quest, and it's the quest to become strong, or a quest of more or less strength. Now, with that said, he would have no choice. He would click it and then wake up the very next morning completely fine, but his sister Nezuko on the ground becoming a demon. Now, he would immediately pick her up running off, and let's just say would not like the fact that she would begin to attack him, and soon Giyu Tomioka, the water Hashira, would show up as well. Now, everything would go exactly the same. I mean, there's just no way it wouldn't. Exactly the same as the manga and as the anime. Giyu would fight him, or would try to kill Nezuko, tell him that Nezuko's a demon, and that it's time to basically put her down. But after Tanjiro shows his capabilities, he would let him off. He would be like, you know what, it's fine, like, you figure it out, and he would send him to Urokodaki. But here's where things change massively, and I mean massively, because Tanjiro would initially think that that whole screed was more or less a dream of some sorts, because, I mean, they're living in a time where video games straight up don't exist, and these anomalies just don't happen, so what the hell was that? But he would soon realize that this was no anomaly, this was genuinely something that happened. He would see that he has a quest, a daily quest to basically become strong. It says that he has to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 1 kilometer run, or 10 kilometer run, every single day. Now, this seems like a lot, and Tanjiro would even think so as well, but he would have no idea why he has to do this anyways. Like, what's the point? And during this time, he would think, well, maybe he should do it just in case, because he doesn't know what this even means, and frankly, he didn't even think demons existed in the first place, so maybe this has something to do with it. Maybe this is part of the demon's plan, but that's beyond the point, at least to a certain extent. So he decides to take his sister Nezuko, but he would also begin his 10-kilometer run and would continue to work out doing push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, which would be pretty decently easy for Tanjiro because he's pretty naturally strong. but these wouldn't be necessarily fully easy. Like, this wouldn't be a breeze. He wouldn't be able to do it in like an hour. He would most likely take him half the day, if not more than that. And then eventually he would arrive at where he would meet his first encounter with a demon. Luckily enough, this would go practically exactly the same because nothing has necessarily changed. But after defeating the demon, or somewhat defeating him, he would actually get a bit of a kind of a title. This title would be deemed as a, well, Slayer of Demon, but it's an unofficial title. It seems like it's temporary and only lasts for a couple hours. It's something that is very odd to him because he doesn't understand it. But on top of that, he's given multiple things or multiple ideas that he can choose from because of his daily quest. Initially, just taking the extra points and also taking the points from leveling up and putting it into strength or vitality or agility, intelligence, or sense. These are all the stats that he can possibly use. My opinion, Tanjiro is a smart person, so he would most likely kind of evenly spread it around, but he would probably lean more towards strength just because his sense and intelligence is already pretty good, and his sense of smell kind of makes up for it, and that maybe even has him have a passive boost to sense itself because of his sense of smell, literally his sense of smell. Now, with that said, he would meet Urokodaki, and Urokodaki would kind of treat him exactly the same, but Tanjiro would bring up kind of this weird stat thing that he has. It's kind of a lot of pluses and minuses, and he can upgrade this stat and this stat, and he would explain these things, and Urokodaki would tell him that he has no idea what he's talking about, like, at all. And this alone would kind of freak out Tanjiro. I mean, Tanjiro would literally sit there and be like, what do you mean you have no idea what I'm talking about? Is this not like a normal thing? Like, this isn't normal at all? And Urokodaki would be completely transparent about the fact that he's never heard of that in his life. That he's heard about demons, about demon slayers, about Hashira, and so on, but he's never heard about what he's talking about. That is completely different. Now, with all that said, Tanjiro would more or less learn from Urokodaki throughout this time and make sure to keep up with his normal training. Well, his normal, daily quest, of course. And if he fails the daily quest, he has no idea what's going to happen, so he prefers not to test that idea. But throughout this time, he actually gets really strong. I mean, he will continuously do push-ups, sit-ups, squats, 10-kilometer runs, and so on. Plus, on top of that, learning how to use concentration breathing, which gives a large boost to all of his stats and makes the element actually visible, which would completely shock Urokodaki, thinking that he's never had someone actually visibly have water being streamed around his body while utilizing the techniques. Maybe the water would even be able to help him in the art of combat. He has no idea, but that's a completely different idea for another time. Now, Tanjiro would continue training and getting better and better and better. Same thing when he goes and actually trains with Sabito and Makomo. He would be ready for the final selection very quickly, and Tanjiro would continue every single day, level up, and continued using his daily quests, and eventually would actually try to gain some items. And I want you to think about this. He did this for a long time, arguably a very long time. It was bare minimum over a year of training. If I'm not wrong, I think it was 18 months. I might be not completely correct about that, so I apologize if I am. But he did spend basically like a year and a half to 2 years training as a demon slayer. And, well, if he does that entire time while having this daily quest, there is no way he wouldn't get drastically more strong just passively on the way. And on top of that, well, we're talking about he could have just continued to more or less pick up different items. You know that you are allowed to pick a random box or a random kind of open crate, and he probably could get different maybe weapons out of it, or more specifically, a dungeon key. So throughout this time of training, he 100% could utilize a dungeon key, that would send him into the depths of a brand new dungeon, and he would take a sword. Now, most of his dungeons, just for simplicity's sake, would revolve around more or less demons, but also other creatures that could exist. Maybe other demon-like versions of your normal solo leveling creatures. So demon-like dogs or hounds or something like that, or demon-like goblins. And Tanjiro at this point entering this dungeon would be drastically more powerful and would be way better equipped just fight-wise or skill-wise than even Sun Jin-woo himself. Because you probably wouldn't even get a key until upwards of a year later, where he's already a decently sizable level, nothing crazy, probably toward level 20 or so. I mean, this is a year's worth of training we're talking about. And yes, he doesn't necessarily fight actual monsters, and that probably would slow down his leveling, but he continues to do his daily quests, and his stats would continue to rise, and so on and so forth. So he's ready for this dungeon. This dungeon wouldn't be too crazy, and him fighting all of those demon-like creatures would continuously give him the temporary boost of a demon slayer, but once he actually does go and take on the final selection, he can officially get the title as Demon Slayer. But with that said, I want to talk about the dungeon just a little bit, and I don't want to go too in depth with a dungeon, but he could face down goblins, these kind of like wolf-like demon creatures, and eventually the same thing Sun Jin-woo did, eventually getting an actual weapon. And all of his weapons, what I would do is make it all Nichirin based. So he would actually have a Nichirin, more or less sword or dagger or some sort of weapon before even getting it normally, which would also give him massive boosts to the weapon. For instance, maybe a poison effect, or maybe the weapon could also basically allow him to chunk past or percentage based health based on a percentage of a bleed and stuff like that. Stuff that would more or less be able to help him fight the demons. Now, going on to the final selection, he would breeze through the final selection. And like I said, the story of this doesn't necessarily matter, because a lot of this would be a breeze for Tanjiro, especially the early version of it. Tanjiro would defeat all the demons in there, getting massive amounts of XP, thinking that this would be the best choice of course of action really, for him to do, because he could rack up as much experience points as possible, leveling up quite a bit throughout this time, and eventually returning to Urokodaki after getting his Nichirin ore, and also just finishing off every demon there. Now, with that said, a lot of these people that are at the Demon Slayer final selection are in complete and utter shock. I mean, how the hell is this guy so strong? Nobody knows. They're all freaking out, thinking that he's some sort of prodigy, but he's not necessarily a prodigy. He's just utilizing something that is so unknown to this verse. And when Tanjiro would basically arrive back with Urokodaki, it would be a great reunion. He would even explain to Urokodaki how well he did, and when he would get his Nichirin sword, he could see that there are massive bonuses to that sword specifically, because it was actually crafted by someone that of high importance, or someone that is very skilled in crafting that type of weaponry. This would officially give him the title of Demon Slayer, and it would go on to make his sword drastically more powerful. This sword would have an instant kill when he slices the neck of a demon, and it also obviously depends on the strength of the demon, of course, but it has a quote-unquote instant kill, which kind of already happens. You know, you slice the head off, they die, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But this would be even greater, because when he would attack the demon, the regeneration would be slowed, and he would more or less have a passive red blade already. That's how crazy overpowered this version of Tanjiro would be. But this is where things get kind of funny, because Tanjiro, during the final selection, had to survive for a long time, and he tried his best to actually keep up with his squats and stuff like that, but the very last day, he would forget about it. And when he would forget about it, well, it would send him into the failed daily quest, which would be a punishment of 3 hours. But luckily enough, he's already pretty strong, But the issue is he would be chased by hordes of demons, hordes of them. So he would have to slice through as many as possible or just flat out run away. And Tanjiro would fight for 3 hours straight, gaining immense amounts of XP, but also gaining an even greater passive ability in terms of being a demon slayer, ranking him up to that next kind of level of demon slayer and giving him an actual passive bonus of 30% when he's striking down demons. So more or less, he actually can kill demons easier because he's a higher ranked demon slayer, and this will continue to happen as he levels up into the realm of Hashira, or maybe even the realm of a Hashira like high level, basically being better than all the Hashira, or so on and so forth. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, with all that said, he would come out pretty unscathed by this. I mean, he is pretty powerful already, and the Swamp Demon would be no issue. And when he would face down Muzan, Muzan would fear him even more. I mean, Muzan could tell that he's super powerful, and it's kind of unheard of. Like, how did this guy even survive when he killed him? He literally has memory of killing Tanjiro, but somehow he's alive. He thinks to himself that maybe he's a demon, but he has no connection to him. Maybe he's somehow a demon like Lere Tamea who separated, but no, that's not the case. Muzan would think to himself that he needs to actually just get out of here and not worry about this guy, so much so that he doesn't actually even send anybody to hunt down Tanjiro, like at all. Because ironically enough, this version of Muzan would fear Tanjiro. It would be pretty damn scary. It's as if he's a zombie coming back from the dead, and Muzan realizes that if he's an actual demon slayer and he has the ability to come back from the dead like that, well, he's no joke, and he's not going to play around and actually stick around and send demons after him at this moment. He needs to be better prepared for whoever this guy is. But luckily for Tanjiro, Muzan has no idea what the hell he's doing. Like, straight up doesn't know anything about Tanjiro's powers and so on. But of course, he would speak with Lere Tamea and Yushiro about more or less what he should do and how he can cure his sister and so on. And that whole conversation goes exactly the same. Now, he does meet Zenitsu, he does fight Kyogai, he does meet Inosuke and so on. And all of these things would literally go exactly the same. Exactly the same. And only reason why I say exactly the same is because, well, he would defeat them easily, but that's the only thing that would be quote-unquote different. I mean, he already won these fights in canon, but this would be just drastically easier because of his ability to more or less injure demons a lot more, reduce regeneration, have a passive red blade, and have a whole leveling system that allows him to be faster, have better strength, have more agility, have better intelligence, have better sense. All of these things are drastically giving him a boost, and then on top of that, concentration breathing gives him a large boost to his stats, and his element actually helps him in battle, and with water breathing would drastically slow demons. And when eventually he would get sun breathing, which he would against Rui, sun breathing, or the Himokimi Kagura, would more or less allow him to drastically, and when I mean drastically injure demons no matter what. He slices through their leg, the regeneration stops for a very, very long time. Like, Rui would even realize that he has no chance against this Tanjiro, and Tanjiro would slice through him like butter, and everybody would kind of be in shock about this, especially when Gyu would arrive and see that Tanjiro eliminated Rui very easily. And frankly, it was so easy that he's obviously of Hashira standards, and that would be no doubt. Even his title would eventually reflect that he is now Hashira level. Now, this would even give him a larger boost to actually attack potency against demons. And he would eventually have the whole conversation with the Hashira about, hey, Nezuko's a good demon and so on. And even this version of Nezuko, you could argue, is probably a lot more tame because of Tanjiro and just his effects on other people. Now, with kind of going on with that same line of reasoning, she would still get cut up. I mean, Sotomi is an absolute freaking freak, and this guy is gonna stab the box no matter what because he believes what he believes, and he can't think anything otherwise. So he would stab the box, and he would try to, show that she's a bad demon, but she would prove him wrong. Now, from here on out, there are massive, massive, massive things that will change. That's with concentration breathing constant that he can learn, his training in general right where they are, spending a large amount of time during rehabilitation. And of course, he doesn't necessarily need rehabilitation, but the training alone would allow him to use concentration breathing constant, making him way stronger than just concentration breathing. And then on top of that, he's able to sit there and more or less farm through daily quests that would allow him to either get other dungeon keys or just regular stats or stuff like that. And this would make him powerful, very powerful. And like I said, I am trying something new out with these what ifs, because this doesn't really necessarily needs to be talked about throughout the entire time. I mean, if Tanjiro does go with Rengoku to the Mugen train, then obviously Akaza would still show up, but there would be no trouble in terms of fighting the one and only Enmu, which, as much as I think Enmu is hilarious and I think it's a great demon, he wouldn't be any trouble with Enmu, in my opinion. I don't think Rengoku would end up having trouble, and I think if he was alone, he still would have figured it out and been able to kill him. Now, if Tanjiro is there, they kill Enmu way easier, way simpler, and honestly, it's a breeze. I mean, having 2 Hashira level, which Tanjiro honestly is way more than just Hashira level. Like, he is pretty high up there at this point. And then when Akaza appears, Tanjiro would actually be able to understand how to defeat him relatively quickly. And this version of Tanjiro with Rengoku would kill Akaza. There's no doubt in my mind. With all the stats, passive bonuses, the ability to more or less slow down his regeneration basically to a halt, all of these things would allow them to get the better of Akaza, slicing his head off and permanently defeating him. And this would even do so much that Tanjiro may even awaken his Demon Slayer mark right here and now. This would then label him as Hashira, and then in quotes, the marked one, making him a Hashira that has a Demon Slayer mark, giving him an even crazier bonus to just all his stats with a multiplier of 1.5 times because of the Demon Slayer mark. It is literally said that they more or less, or the Demon Slayer mark more or less gives all their attributes, or basically boosts all their attributes is what I'm trying to say. And this is perfect for a leveling system, so defeating Akaza would put every demon on notice and would even shock most of the demons there that are even higher up than Akaza to their core, because how strong is this person truly? And this would continue on. This is going to be a very common occurrence, because if he goes to the Entertainment District arc, Akaza was stronger than both Daki and Gyutaro, so this would be an easy event. Same thing with the Swordsmith's Village arc. This would be an easy event as well, because Akaza just outscales everyone else here. So we can just jump straight into the idea of them fighting Kokoshibo, because, well, Tomioka and Tanjiro have to fight somebody, which this would make that fight specifically even easier, because not only would Tanjiro be stronger, but they would have a Hashira training arc during that time that would allow Tanjiro to get even more powerful off of raw training. Yes, a stat system, I think, as I said in the very beginning, would make this guy super overpowered. Way too overpowered, and he would easily get to the point, like right now, that he could solo the verse. Easily solo the verse, and he's might even be stronger than Yorichi. No, he's probably stronger than Yorichi. It depends on how OP you think Yorichi really was, but I mean, this guy, Tanjiro, is that dude. There is no way around it. He's faster, better regeneration, better durability than even demons themselves, and he's not even a demon. because of all of the solo leveling aspects. I could even go further and talk about the shop system. Talk about how he could buy armor, weaponry, increase different attributes that he has, and this armor would only help him. It would just be drastically better for him, make him more tanky, make him more durable, give him faster attributes or stronger attributes, and so on and so forth. And the chain of reaction of all the training in Demon Slayer would carry him through. And when you get to the end game, when you get to the Demon Slayers versus Muzan himself, Tanjiro would be able to take on Muzan, and Muzan would fear everything, or everything that he feared would come to life. He would fear that someone like Yorichi would show up, but the issue is that someone even stronger than Yorichi has now shown up. Now, with that said, I would love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. What kind of weaponry would you want to see Tanjiro have if he did have solo leveling? What kind of things or abilities would you like to see if Tanjiro had solo leveling? This was a different type of what if. I mean, like I said in the very beginning, he was going to be very OP. So I wanted to talk about kind of some of the ideas that I had if he did have solo leveling. Now, with all that said, hope you all enjoyed the video. And if you did, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say. I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.